Hi, it's Bill Hitchcock, and it is April 20th, 2020 today when I'm recording this. We're going to take a look at grabbing some commodity data. So I've gone out to eLearn, scrolled through down to the time series analysis where I've got a beef and chicken file. Here's what I did. I selected this URL that's highlighted down here, went to a new browser window, and then just pasted that URL in here. Hit enter, and here is the website. So let's scroll down a little bit, and you can see it's got some charts there for you, and it's got a series of different commodities. So what I want you to do is you go ahead and grab a couple of these commodities and do some of your own analysis on it. For example, you might want to try something like diesel and diesel and gasoline. Might work out well, or heating oil and natural gas might be another one that would be kind of interesting, or even natural gas and propane might be nice comparison to look at. If you're more into some agricultural products, if you scroll a little bit farther down here, there you could do something on coffee versus tea. You could do some grains and so on, barley, wheat, corn, rice, etc. I'm going to come down here to where we've got beef. So I'm going to click on beef. And it tells me that this is the low price in US cents per pound. It's got some other information about that, so it looks like that's at 100 weight, so 204. So divide that by 100 and you get $2.04 per pound. Down here it's got US dollars per kilogram. Then it looks like it's looking at that information. So that's fine. It's got that for us here. Let's take a look at this for 30 years. We want to get a long-term picture on this. So I'll click on 30 years. And again, scroll down. If I can get by my picture here to do it. So we can always just click on the bar and do it that way. All right, here's my prices. So it's got the month, it's got the price, and it has the change. So between April 1990, March 1990 and April 1990, it looks like it dropped a penny, and that worked out to be 0.4% based on that. So we'll just do some quick calculations and find out how that works. So what I want to do is I want to pull this information in from the website and put that onto a spreadsheet. So I'm just going to try copying and pasting it. I'll click and drag all the way down to the bottom here. And just do it kind of slowly so you don't get messed up. Sometimes I manage to mess things up myself. Let's see, I'm down to 2,000. We got to go a little bit farther. Let's scroll down a bit more. Please be patient as I'm doing this. We're getting close to the end. Up there, I've got it. And finally, that's what I want to select. So I'm going to hit Control-C to copy it. Down here it says export table to Excel. You can give that a try, but I think you've got to have a login. You can get a free login. It's not that hard. But again, copy and pasting should work for you. So I've got it copied. I'm going to go to Excel. Here's a blank workbook. Now, if you just try to hit paste here, you've got a couple options. It'll give you the source formatting. It might give you the destination formatting. Sometimes what happens is it pastes this all the way going across the row here. And if that happens to you, try a paste special, try it in text, and it doesn't give you any formatting, which actually is fine in this case because we're going to do our own formatting anyways. Hit OK, and hopefully you'll get the data. If that doesn't work, what you can always do, and what I've done in the past, is gone to Notepad, and I'll put it in a text editor, paste it there first, and then import it into Excel. So, just whatever options you need to get the text imported onto your spreadsheet. That's really not supposed to be the task on this particular spreadsheet. I want to take a look at analyzing the data. So, but hopefully you'll get this in. So anyways, now that I've got that, I want to save it. So I'm going to click File, Save As. And I'm just going to browse to where I want to save this. And again, you can save it on whatever drive you want. I'll put this on my C drive. I'm going to scroll down here. I think I've got a temp directory that I have set up. There's my temp directory. And let's just call this my beef prices. And I've got it saved. So that's kind of step one. Step is just importing the data. Step two, like what we always do, I'm going to right click on my column here, insert a new column. I want to keep track of the sequence order. Even though I am 99% sure that this is all sorted by the month, that'll be fine. I still want to just make sure I've got the sequence in here, so I'll type in 1, 2, 3. I'll format that with a comma format. Get rid of the decimals, and double click on my fill handle to extend that series. So when I hit end, the end key turns on the end mode down here at the bottom, and my down arrow key, it goes all the way down to the bottom, and I find out I've got 361 records, pricing records that I have here. So let's hit Control Home, get up to the top. I'm going to hit Shift, right arrow, come over several columns because we're going to add in some extra columns. Let's boldface these field names. Let's center them. Let's use wrap text. Then while I've got this selected here, I'm going to hold Shift key, hit my end key again, and down arrow, go all the way down to the bottom and a little bit past. And I'm going to change the font size to something smaller just so I can fit things and make this all look a little bit cleaner. I realize that's a bit small, so I'm just going to zoom in over here and zoom in just to make that a little bit easier for you to read. Hit Control Home, I'm back up to the top. Alright, for these months, actually when it imports it, Excel assumes that they're days, so it's given me the first of each month here for that. So what you might consider doing is changing this field name just to date, since that's actually what it's got stored in here. And if you want to change the format on these, Shift and down, and maybe just try a short date format, and you can have that in there. Kind of up to you on how you want to format it. We're going to strip off the month and year and quarter and do some of that stuff in a minute. For the prices, Shift and down. As you look through the prices, for the most part, they all have 2 decimal points. There's a few of them that don't, so I want them all to have decimal points. I'm going to use a comma format here. And if I hit end and down just to check this, it looks like this March, $4.47. I believe that that's the price of beef in kilograms. So we could divide it by 2.2 to get that in pounds if we wanted to. That would be something we'd have to go back to our original data source just to check what these prices actually represent. So for our analysis, we're kind of more concerned about kind of the relative differences between all of this. I'm going to hit Control Home. Also with the prices, you probably could have used a $ format. That would have been totally appropriate because it is in US dollars that we have this. I'm going to narrow up these columns here while I'm at it. Narrow up the price, maybe not quite that narrow. I like to leave a little bit of space. All right, for the change, it's got a dash in here. I'm going to delete that dash because I don't want to mess things up. But these are all numbers that came from the spreadsheet. So I want to just verify those and make sure that we've got those, make sure that we have our understanding of what they are. So let's take a look at first, we'll put in the dollar change. In other words, how much has the price of beef changed from month to month? So for instance, in March, I don't have the previous month, I can't compute that one. But for April, I'm just going to take April's price, subtract off March's price, and that tells me it's down 1 cent. Then it looks like it came back up in May, and then it went up a couple cents in June, went up a little bit higher in July, and we could make our guesses there about why beef prices are starting to change. There could be there's increased demand during the summer grilling season, for example. Prices tend to go up a little bit because of that. Let's copy this all the way down to the bottom, so I'll just double click, and we've got the change in all of our prices. All right, let's do the percentage change just to verify that is that the right number or not. Our percentage change is equal to the amount that the price changed divided by whatever the previous month's price was. And that's where it looks like I'm getting my 4%. So let's increase the decimals on this. And we'll copy this down and check some of those numbers. And sure enough, it looks like they're all comparing is what we had before. And that way we're actually doing the real calculation. So I'm going to go back up to the top, go to cell A2, choose View, Freeze Panes, and Freeze Panes. I'm going to right click on my Sheet tab. Let's rename this and just call it Beef, or whatever your commodity happens to be. Save your work, and now we want to start doing some do some efforts on the dates and pull up some information from that. So one thing that I want to do is I want to get the quarter numbers. You could do calculations on the quarter numbers. Sometimes I think it's just as easy to look this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another sheet, rename this, and call it my, I don't know, date info sheet. And for the date information, we're going to have the, if I can get up to the top here, the month number and my quarter number. And I'm just going to manually type these in. 1, 2, 3. Take that series, drag it down to 12. 12 months in the year. For the quarters, I'm just going to type them in. 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, and 4, 4, 4 for the quarters. You know, these are calendar year quarters. If you want to do a different fiscal year quarter, you could add that into a third column and do that. All right, I'm going to highlight this data. Let's give it a range name. And we can call it month table, quarter table, month quarter, MONQTR. And if I go back to my beef sheet, let's get the year, the month, well, we just MUN number and QTR number, just so those fields look kind of similar. So for the year, it's the year function of my date. There's 1990. We can copy this all the way down, narrow up the column, maybe make it a little bit wider just to give you some white space. That looks good. Month number, we can use the month function. So I'm going to grab that from the date. Again, narrow up the column. You can decide if you want, you know, much extra space in there. Copy this all the way down. It looks like it's stripping off the month number. And then finally for the quarter number, we can use a VLOOKUP. And I'm going to look up my month in, type in a comma, my date information sheet, and I'm going to highlight all that information. And as I do it, notice that it uses my range name up here. That way I don't have to worry about absolute and relative cell addresses. Type in a comma. I want the second column of this, the quarter number. Type in another comma, and I want to make sure that this is an exact match. So I type in false, parenthesis, hit enter, and I've got quarter 1. And we've got all of our quarters put in here as well. So that all looks good, and we can group our data different ways. You know, if we want to analyze what do beef prices look like just in the first quarter for every period, you know, all of that would be interesting information to pull up. Finally, what I want to do is I want to add one more column in here, and this will let me group the years by every 2 years, every 3 years, every 5 years, every 10 years, etc. So what I'll do is I'm going to start out. Let's start out with the number 2. And what we'll do with this is we're going to type in equals round down parenthesis. My number is going to be the date, so in this case it's B2, and I'm going to divide that by my whatever grouping I want. All right, the number 2, the number 5, the number 10, the number 3, etc. And I'm going to hit Function F4 on that. And then I just want I want to round this down to the nearest zero or nearest integer. You know, so I type in a 0 here. All right. So what I've got so far is it's taken the date, and let's see. We want to. Oops, I forgot to put something in. I want to take my date. All right, hang on. I'm getting myself all messed up. Let me start this over. I want to look at the year. I want to subtract that from 1990 and then add into it like a fraction of this grouping here. So let's do it this way. Equals, round down. I want to take parenthesis, the year, subtract off 1990, and then I'll divide that remainder by J1, and I'm going to always reference that cell. So that should give me, let's see, in this case it's going to give me 0 divided by 2, which is 0. And then I'm going to multiply that number by this factor in J1. So when I get to 1991, it's still going to give me a 0. It's not going to give me anything. When I get to 1992 minus 1990 gives me 2 divided by 2, which will give me 1, times 2, which gives me 2, and then I add that to my original starting year of 1990. Hit enter, and I've got too few arguments. That's because I forgot my comma. All right, let me hit OK. I forget to tell it how many digits I want to round this off to. So I want to round it to the 0 digits. In other words, to the nearest digit. So for 1990, I'm getting basically 0 divided by 2. Copy this down. It's still giving me 1990. I copy this down a little bit further into 91. It's still giving me 1990. In other words, I'm grouping every 2 years. So let's keep copying this down a little bit further. By the time I get to 1992, then it changes it from 1990 to 92. Now I'm going to get 92 all the way through 92 and 93. So I'll drag this down until I get to, 1994. And let's take a look and see if it changes there. And sure enough, here's January of 94, and I've got my 2 years selected there. So you don't have to copy it that slowly, just copy it all the way down. And if I go all the way down to the end, you can see here's 2019. That's still considered part of the 2 years of 2018, and then it jumps to 2020 and so on. So it's kind of, yeah, it's a quirky formula, but trust me, it works. And then the other thing is, now I want to look at this every 3 years. Type in a 3. Here's all the 1990s. And then as soon as we get to 1993, it groups and changes it to 93 and so on. If we go all the way down to the bottom, you can see I've got it grouped 2017, 2020, and so on. If you change it to a 5, it gives you every 5 years. And end and down. And there I've got 2015 all grouped together. So it just gives you a nice way to be able to filter some of your information out. All right, hit Control Home. Save this. Let's try this out as a chart. Let's grab the date and the prices. Shift N down. Let's insert a line chart. And I'm going to move that chart location. Let me see if I can move my head here. All right, there we go. Move the chart location. And I want to move this as a new chart. And we'll just call it the beef chart. And there I've got the prices. Looks like it was starting around, what, $2.50 or so, and it ended up getting at one point as high as $6 per kilogram, I think this was. Now it's dropped back down. It's at $4.50. So you can see what's happened to beef prices. So if I want to change some of these things around here, I'm going to move my date information. I've got my date information, my beef. Here's my beef chart. Let's go to beef, hit Control Home, save our work before I mess things up even worse. go to Data, choose Filter, and then under this column for 5, let's uncheck Select All. Take a look at this in the year 2000. Hit OK. And if you look at your beef chart, now I'm looking at just the range from 2000 through the end of 2004. So you've got all that information grabbed that way. And let's take a quick look as we scroll down through our information here. Let's take a look at this, hit End and Down. Sure enough, there we go. There's our December of 2004, and then the next would be 2005 if you wanted to look at it that way. This data will all work if you turn the filter off. You don't have to just set up a chart that way. If you want to do a pivot chart, you'll have these fields in here to be able to use as slicers and look at the data that way. But it really does help as far as, instead of looking at 30 years at one long period, you kind of group this into smaller periods. Just using the filter to look at your charts that way works out pretty well. So I hope this helps for grouping. Give it a try. Try it with some different commodities. Compare a couple of them, and you should be good.